Welcome back. I went through all 32 NFL teams' coaches to figure out exactly how they impact your fantasy football team. Today's episode, the Minnesota Vikings. So take a seat, class is in session. Have they made any changes in the coaching department? Yes, they added Brian Flores. His specialty is safeties and linebackers. But moving over to the offensive side of the ball and what interests us more, we've got Kevin O'Connell, who specializes in quarterbacks. This is seen by his time with the Browns, the Redskins, the Rams, and now the Vikings. Moving over to the offensive coordinator, and that is Wes Phillips. His knowledge is primarily specialized in tight ends. This is seen by his time with the Cowboys, the Redskins, the Rams, and now the Vikings. Looking at the departures more than anything, that defense has shifted a lot. Does that mean they're going to be good out the gate? I have zero idea. But I'm also not confident in saying that it looks like they filled all those gaps that they needed to either, via free agency or the draft. But considering how terrible their defense was last year, who knows? There's a lot of room for upside. But now that we've laid the foundation for exactly how the Vikings have attacked this offseason, we can start to dive into exactly how it impacts our various fantasy teams. But first, we need to check with the guys upstairs to see exactly how they have the Minnesota Vikings projected to go about this season so we can give our knowledge a little bit more structure. The Vikings are currently projected to still get between 8 and 9 wins, and I just think that's going to be a very kind of back and forth division. And based on consensus rankings, there's no true kind of understanding of where the Vikings are actually going to land this season. And I know I've kind of put 2 teams at third already in this division. I'm not going to put another one there, don't worry. But I think realistically they're going to end up either first or second. And I think that Week 17 matchup is going to be very intriguing between them and the Packers. I really wouldn't be surprised if that's a fight for first. I mean, the true reality of the matter is this division is entirely up for grabs. But now that we've got really strong understanding of the general direction in which the Minnesota Vikings are built towards this season, we can start to identify exactly how Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips affect our various fantasy teams. Starting off with the quarterback position, and that should be Kirk Cousins. Quarterbacks have typically fared pretty well in this, but I think realistically a 17 fantasy point floor makes a lot of sense, primarily based on the receivers that he has here, if not higher. There's potentially a rumor mill about Kirk Cousins being traded, but I don't see it particularly happening, but I know that the 49ers might be trying to make a move to get rid of Trey Lance in some sort of package. Does that encompass Kirk Cousins? More likely not. More than likely it's just all hearsay from what I'm saying. But I do think we should expect Kirk Cousins' overall projection to continue to go higher. Just the issue with him is his rushing upside. You're basing it all on his theoretical passing ability, which was very precedent last year. Going kind of off a consensus average here, I think that a 19 fantasy point per game is a nice safe floor for somebody like Kirk Cousins here. Moving over to the RB1 and a guy that everyone's optimistic on, and I am too, and that is Alexander Mattison, even though I don't think I have him in a draft yet. I'm just going to keep it simple. A 15 fantasy point floor is very safe for him. I don't think he's going to reach that 18 fantasy points per game like everyone is optimizing him to be, but I think a safe floor of 15 fantasy points per game makes a lot of sense here. Great talent, just there's a lot of weapons in this offense that Kirk Cousins gets to use. And moving over to the RB2, and that theoretically should be Ty Chandler, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it was Keenan Gonwall. Considering that Alexander Mattison should have realistically all the work this year, I think a 7 fantasy point per game projection is very, very safe. Especially considering the charts look like they're in a bit of a downtrend. And moving over to the wide receiver one, and that is Justin Jefferson. I mean, to put it simply, he was absolutely elite. He did have some games falling off, but I mean, he realistically should continue to get that upwards trajectory higher and higher and higher. He still hasn't received that kind of high level of touchdown volatility, so to speak, so I think we could see even the true wide receiver one season out of him. I think a 20 fantasy point floor at the bare minimum is safe for Justin Jefferson. Like, he's going exactly where he should in drafts. Like, he's realistically the consensus 101 or second pick overall in your draft. That you can really flip-flop it. All depends on who you think is going to see more volume this year. And I really don't think you can go wrong with either side of it. Moving over to the wide receiver 2, and that is Jordan Addison. I don't think he'll emerge as the best rookie wide receiver in this class, but I think he's going to show a lot of potential. And the reason I don't think he's going to shine as potentially the other rookies is mainly from opportunity. I mean, he's got Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson essentially in front of him. I do most certainly think he's going to get his in this offense, especially since I want to say he had the best contested catch rate in this whole entire class. So I think a 12 to 13 fantasy point per game projection is safe for him. But I also think he's a little bit overvalued in fantasy drafts at this particular second time because look at all the weapons that Kirk Cousins has. Moving over to the wide receiver 3, and that is KJ Osborne, somebody who's been impressing in mini camps. I think we can trend potentially more on the light side of this and go with about a 10 fantasy point per game projection. There's a lot of good weapons in this offense this year. It's going to be pretty scary. Moving over to the tight end 1, and that is TJ Hawkinson. The guy was an absolute monster, no matter where you put him. Like, TJ Hawkinson, I do think is pretty much fairly priced for where he's at. He's going to be receiving a ridiculous amount of targets. This offense is just going to be extremely difficult to cover. Could he easily be in that 13 to 14 fantasy point game realm? 100%. But I'm going to go with a little bit of a reduced projection and say he's going to be more in that 12 to 13 fantasy point per game realm. We'll see exactly how it all plays out, but I mean, TJ Hawkinson should be absolutely elite in fantasy this year. It all just depends on exactly who's being targeted in that offense on that particular day. So to kind of just recap this Minnesota Vikings team, you should be buying as many pieces of it as you possibly can, but I do think there's some pieces that might be a little overpriced, but I also think it's exactly how it falls back to you at value. And I do think they're going to have one of the more entertaining Week 17 matchups going against the Green Bay Packers. I don't know. I'm just not as pessimistic about this Vikings team as it sounds like a little bit of consensus is from the people I'm talking to. But we'll see exactly how that plays out. So feel free to drop your fantasy football questions down below, and I'll make sure to answer them as quickly as possible. And then, yeah, if you like the video, make sure you like it. Subscribe. We got a video coming out on the New England Patriots tomorrow. And until next time, peace.